Some cars are flashy, some are fast, but a rare few are practically immortal. These are the machines that refuse to die. Cars that outlast marriages, outlive their owners, and sometimes even survive the scrapyard. Forget the latest tech. These legends were built in an era when over-engineering was the norm, not the exception. Today we're counting down 10 old cars that were truly built to last forever. Number 10, Toyota Hilux, 1970s to 1990s. If there's one truck that's become a legend for its refusal to die, it's the Toyota Hilux. Farmers, explorers, and even war correspondents all tell the same story. This little pickup just doesn't quit. First introduced in 1968, the Hilux became world famous through the 70s, 80s, and 90s for its bulletproof 4-cylinder engines and simple, overbuilt frame. These weren't fancy trucks, no plush interiors, no cutting-edge gadgets, just steel, bolts, and mechanical parts that could be repaired with a basic toolkit. In fact, Hiluxes were so reliable that in many parts of the world, you can still find ones from the 80s hauling goods in rural towns today. The most famous proof of its durability came from Top Gear's torture test, where hosts tried to kill an 80s Hilux by drowning it in the ocean, setting it on fire, and even dropping it from a building. Each time it coughed, sputtered, and still ran. That's the Hilux in a nutshell. Not the prettiest, not the fastest, but maybe the toughest truck ever put on the road. Number 9, Volvo 240, 1974 to 1993. If the Hilux is the world's indestructible truck, the Volvo 240 is the unbreakable family car. Produced from the mid-70s through the early 90s, this Swedish brick on wheels became a legend for one reason: it just wouldn't die. Volvo didn't design the 240 to be glamorous. They designed it to survive Scandinavian winters. The engines were famously simple and overbuilt, especially the B21. Which could rack up hundreds of thousands of miles with only routine maintenance. It wasn't unusual for a 240 to cross the 500,000 mile mark and still run like a champ. But what really set it apart was the body. The 240 looked like it had been carved out of a concrete block, and in a way, it was. Heavy steel panels, thick doors, and a chassis so stiff it became the standard for safety testing. In fact, the Volvo 240 was used as the baseline crash test car in the US for years. Quirky, yes. Stylish, not really. But safe, reliable, and nearly immortal. Absolutely. Even today, it's common to find a 240 still chugging along with faded paint, worn seats, and an odometer that looks like it's run out of numbers. Number 8, Toyota Land Cruiser 70 Series 1984. Some cars get nicknames. The Land Cruiser 70 didn't need one. Its reputation said it all. Introduced in 1984, this boxy off-roader was designed for one thing: going places where roads don't exist. While luxury SUVs were adding leather seats and digital dashboards, the 70 series stuck to basics: solid axles, body-on-frame construction, and big understressed engines like the 4.2-liter straight-six diesel. It wasn't about horsepower, it was about endurance. That's why you'll find Land Cruiser 70s working in the harshest places on Earth: African deserts, Australian outback, Middle Eastern oil fields. Aid organizations, explorers, and even militaries rely on them because they'll keep running when newer trucks give up. One stat tells the story. In 2014, after 30 years of production, Toyota had sold more than 2.5 million 70 series Land Cruisers worldwide, and many of those are still in service today. In fact, some countries never stopped selling them. They're literally still being made because demand hasn't died. Number 7, Lexus LS 400, 1989 to 2000. When Toyota launched Lexus in 1989, the LS 400 was their statement piece, and that statement was durability. On the surface, it looked like a smooth, understated luxury sedan meant to compete with BMW and Mercedes, but underneath it was built like a tank in a tuxedo. The LS 400's 4.0-liter V8, known as the 1UZFE, quickly became legendary for its reliability. Balanced, over-engineered, and designed to handle abuse, it wasn't uncommon for these engines to sail past 300,000 or even 400,000 miles without needing a major rebuild. Taxi fleets in the Middle East put them to work in brutal heat, and owners in the US discovered they could buy a used LS 400 for cheap and drive it for decades. Even more impressive, the refinement never faded. These cars were so well put together that after hundreds of thousands of miles, many still felt smoother and quieter than new luxury cars today. The LS 400 didn't just prove that Lexus belonged in the luxury world, it proved that reliability could be luxurious. Number 6, Ford Crown Victoria, 1992 to 2011. If you've ever ridden in a taxi in New York or watched a cop show in the 2000s, Chances are you've seen the Ford Crown Victoria in action. For nearly 2 decades, it was the backbone of police fleets and cab companies across North America, and the reason was simple. It just wouldn't die. The Crown Vic's 4.6-liter V8 wasn't exotic, but it was dependable, especially when paired with the car's body-on-frame design. That setup made it durable, easy to repair after fender benders, and perfect for the abuse of stop-and-go city driving. Taxi companies routinely pushed Crown Vics past 300,000 miles, with some even reaching 500,000 miles before retiring. Police departments loved them because parts were cheap and every mechanic knew how to fix one. They weren't flashy, but they were bulletproof workhorses. Even today, years after production ended in 2011, you can still spot ex-police Crown Vics roaming city streets or serving as budget-friendly daily drivers. They may be plain, but their durability gave them a cult following. Number 5, Mercedes-Benz W123, 1976 to 1985. When people talk about Mercedes over-engineering their cars, the W123 is usually the first example. Built between 1976 and 1985, this midsize sedan became the gold standard for reliability, not just in Germany, but across the globe. The secret was its diesel engines, particularly the 240D and 300D models. They weren't fast. 0 to 60 often took more than 15 seconds, but they were nearly indestructible. Owners routinely reported odometers passing 500,000 miles, with some examples documented at over 1 million miles. That's why the W123 became the car of choice for taxi fleets from Europe to Africa. They could be beaten, overloaded, and driven across brutal terrain, yet they kept running. Even today, it's common to find W123 taxis still operating in places like Morocco, 40 years after they left the factory. The W123 wasn't about luxury as status, it was about quality as a promise. A Mercedes from this era wasn't just a car, it was an investment in something that would outlast almost anything else on the road. Number 4, Toyota Corolla, 1983 to 2002. Few cars have a reputation as universal as the Toyota Corolla. It's the car that quietly outlasted economic recessions, teenage first drivers, and even neglectful owners who barely changed the oil. From the mid-80s through the early 2000s, the Corolla built its bulletproof status. Engines like the 4A and 7A series were small, simple, and designed to handle daily abuse without complaint. These cars weren't about excitement, they were about consistency. You could start one every morning, in every season, and know it would get you where you needed to go. That's why the Corolla became a global bestseller. Families trusted it, commuters relied on it, and rental fleets loved it. Many examples from the 90s are still on the road today with 300,000 miles or more. And stories of half-million-mile Corollas aren't rare. The Corolla didn't earn fame for power or style. It earned it for showing up day after day, year after year. Sometimes the most ordinary cars are the ones that prove truly immortal. Number 3, Chevrolet CK Pickup, 1960 to 1998. Before the Silverado badge took over, Chevy's CK pickups were the workhorses of America. Built across 4 generations from 1960 to 1998, these trucks were simple, strong, and endlessly adaptable. Farmers, contractors, and families all put them to work, and many are still working today. The key was durability through simplicity. Engines like the 350 small block V8 and the inline 6 were easy to repair, forgiving of neglect, and capable of racking up hundreds of thousands of miles. Paired with sturdy frames and straightforward mechanics, the CK line proved nearly indestructible in daily use. Plenty of these trucks pushed past 400,000 miles with little more than routine maintenance, and it wasn't unusual for them to get a second life as farm trucks after retiring from daily driving. Even today, classic CK models are prized because they'll still start right up after decades of service. Number 2, Honda Accord, late 1980s to 2000s. For decades, the Honda Accord has been the definition of a reliable family sedan, but in the late 80s through the 2000s, it built a reputation for being practically unkillable. The formula was classic Honda: lightweight design, efficient yet durable engines, and transmissions that could handle hundreds of thousands of miles. Engines like the F22 and K series were favorites among mechanics because they just kept running, often with little more than oil changes and timing belt replacements. By the 1990s, the Accord had become a bestseller in North America, praised not just for comfort and value, but for longevity. Stories of Accords running well past 300,000 or 400,000 miles are everywhere, with some even crossing the half-million mark. It wasn't flashy, but that was the point. The Accord wasn't built to turn heads. It was built to keep families moving year after year, through every commute, road trip, and errand. For many owners, it became less of a car and more of a dependable family member. Number 1. Mercedes-Benz W124, 1984 to 1997. If one car deserves the crown for lasting forever, it's the Mercedes-Benz W124. Launched in 1984, this midsize executive sedan wasn't just built, it was engineered with the kind of obsessive detail that made Mercedes famous. The W124 came with a range of engines, but the diesel variants in particular became icons of endurance. Owners routinely clocked 500,000 miles or more, and some examples have even surpassed 1 million miles with their original drivetrain still intact. Taxi companies across Europe swore by them, and mechanics often joke that these cars were built to outlive their owners. It wasn't just the powertrain though. Everything about the W124 was designed to last. Doors that closed with a bank vault thunk, paint that held up for decades, and interiors that stayed solid long after rivals fell apart. Even today, decades after production ended, the W124 still has a cult following. It's not just a car, it's proof that sometimes old school engineering really can cheat time.